Sister gets married to my husband's brother aka Bill and immediately begins to compete, claiming that she got the better end of the deal because she's having a more expensive wedding, going as far as to make snide remarks towards me as her wedding toast. But when this is what Mill had to say in response to her toast. By bursting her bubble, Sister now claims she's humiliated because she didn't know we were the ones funding for the wedding instead of her husband. My husband and I have been married for 5 years, and I thought we had a pretty stable life. My younger sister, Sally, has always been the competitive type, but I never expected it to turn into full-blown pettiness. She's the kind of person who thrives on comparing herself to others and constantly needs to prove she's doing better than everyone else. Growing up, this was mostly harmless sibling rivalry. She'd brag about getting better grades or having more friends, but I always figured it was just a phase she'd grow out of. Apparently, I was wrong. About 2 years ago, Sally started dating my husband's younger brother, Andrew. It all started at one of our family barbecues. They hit it off immediately, and within a few months, they were inseparable. At first, I thought it was kind of sweet. My husband, Jake, was thrilled because it meant our families were becoming closer. I had some reservations about mixing family and relationships, but I told myself it could be nice having my sister as my sister-in-law. Spoiler, I was wrong about that too. The first signs of trouble started small. Sally seemed to turn every interaction into a subtle competition. She'd make little comments about our home, our jobs, even our dog. Stuff like, "Wow, your house is so cozy. Andrew and I were thinking of something bigger, but this is cute." Or, "Oh, Jake's still working at his old company? That's great, he's so loyal. Andrew's thinking of moving to a more senior role soon." I tried not to let it bother me. I mean, that's just Sally being Sally. Right? But it was constant, and it started to wear on me. When Sally and Andrew got engaged about 6 months ago, I was genuinely happy for them. I congratulated her, offered to help with planning, and even shared some tips from my own wedding experience. But Sally waved me off saying, "Thanks, but we're going for something completely different from what you did." No offense. I didn't think much of it at the time, but that was just the beginning. Sally and Andrew decided to have this massive over-the-top wedding. We're talking about a venue that probably costs more than our annual salaries combined. A designer dress, a 5-tier cake, a live band, and a guest list of 250 people. They even planned destination bachelor and bachelorette parties in Vegas. Every family gathering turned into an opportunity for Sally to brag about her wedding. She'd say things like, "We're really trying to set a new standard for weddings in the family," or "It's going to be a real experience, not just a wedding." It wasn't just a wedding talk that got to me though. Sally started taking digs at my marriage. She'd make comments like, "Andrew's so thoughtful. He's always surprising me with gifts. Does Jake ever do that for you?" Or, "I feel so lucky to have found someone who's really ambitious." It was exhausting. Jake told me to ignore her, but it wasn't easy. The real turning point came during the wedding planning. Unbeknownst to Sally, our parents and Jake's parents had been quietly worrying about how much this wedding was costing Andrew and her. Andrew makes a decent salary, but he's also drowning in student loans. Sally, on the other hand, doesn't work and has expensive tastes. My parents and in-laws didn't want them to stop their marriage in financial ruin, so they decided to pitch in. Jake and I even contributed a significant amount as a goodwill gesture. We didn't want to make a big deal about it, so we kept it quiet. Sally, of course, assumed Andrew was footing the entire bill. She gushed about how lucky she was to have a fiancé who could give her such a luxurious wedding. I figured it wasn't worth correcting her. Let her have her moment, I thought. But then came the wedding day, and everything blew up in a way I could have never predicted. The ceremony itself was beautiful. No complaints there. The venue was stunning. The decorations were gorgeous, and Sally looked amazing. For most of the reception, I kept my distance from her, not wanting to deal with any drama. But then came the wedding toasts. Sally stood up to give a speech, and that's when things took a turn. Her toast started off sweet, thanking the guests and talking about how much she loved Andrew. But then out of nowhere, she made a backhanded comment about how not everyone gets the better end of the deal and how she was so lucky to have a husband who could give her the wedding of her dreams. It was painfully obvious she was targeting me. The room fell into awkward silence, and I could feel my face burning with embarrassment. Jake squeezed my hand under the table, silently telling me not to react. Then out of nowhere, my mother-in-law stood up. She's usually a quiet, reserved woman, so I was shocked when she spoke. She calmly told the room that Jake and I had paid for a significant portion of the wedding. The room went dead silent. Sally's face turned ghost white. She tried to laugh it off, but it was clear she was mortified. The rest of the night was painfully awkward. Guests whispered among themselves, and Sally avoided eye contact with me for the remainder of the reception. After the wedding, Sally confronted me. She accused me of humiliating her and letting my mother-in-law ruin her special day. I told her the truth that we never intended for this to come out, But her constant need to compete had gone too far. She stormed off in tears, and we haven't spoken since. Andrew texted Jake the next day, apologizing on Sally's behalf, but saying she was deeply upset. Apparently, she felt betrayed that we haven't told her we were contributing and thought we'd made her look bad on purpose. Jake told him we haven't planned for this to come out and that Sally's behavior during the toast had been out of line. Andrew seemed to understand, but Sally had been telling anyone who would listen that I sabotaged her wedding. Now mutual friends are reaching out asking what really happened. Some are siding with Sally, saying my mother-in-law was out of line. Others think Sally got what she deserved. I never wanted this drama, but now it feels like my relationship with my sister is completely broken. What am I even supposed to say to her now? AITA in this situation? Do you guys have any advice or suggestions? Because I could really use anything at this point. The fallout from the wedding was nothing short of explosive, and honestly, I should have seen it coming. Sally didn't just go radio silent like I had hoped. Instead, she launched a full-scale social media rampage that felt like it was directed squarely at Jake and me, even if she never mentioned us by name. It started the very next day with cryptic Instagram stories. She posted things like, "Some people just can't stand to see you happy and it's always the ones closest to you who betray you." A few hours later, she shared a meme that said, "Fake family is worse than fake friends." At first, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe she was venting about something else. But then came the Facebook posts, and there was no mistaking who they were about. She wrote this long, dramatic status about how some people pretend to support you but only do it to control you and take credit for your success. It was full of vague accusations about being used and betrayed with lines like, "I thought your family was supposed to have your back, not sabotage you." The comment section turned into a mess. Some of her friends and a couple of distant cousins chimed in with generic supportive messages like, "Stay strong, girl, and you don't need that kind of negativity in your life." Meanwhile, my phone started blowing up. Friends and extended family were confused and wanted to know what was going on. My cousins texted me privately asking for the real story. Jake's side of the family wasn't as subtle. His aunts and uncles started calling my in-laws trying to get the scoop, and some of them were genuinely curious while others were clearly fishing for gossip. It felt like we were at the center of a soap opera. The most surprising reactions came from Andrew's side of the family. His siblings were mortified by Sally's behavior. Andrew's older sister, Rachel, who has always been close to Jake, called us to apologize. She was furious that Sally would try to publicly shame us, especially after we had gone out of our way to help her and Andrew financially. Rachel didn't hold back, saying that Sally was acting like a spoiled brat and that Andrew needed to get her under control. I didn't disagree, but I still felt awkward about the whole thing. Our mothers were caught in the middle of all this chaos. My mom was heartbroken by Sally's behavior. She called me in tears saying she didn't understand why Sally was doing this and asking if there was any way to fix it. On the other hand, Jake's mom, who had been the one to spill the beans at the wedding, was more pragmatic. She told me that she didn't regret speaking up because someone had to put Sally in her place, but she also felt bad about how messy things have gotten. The two moms were in constant communication trying to figure out how to manage the situation and prevent it from escalating further. My mom suggested we all sit down and have a family meeting, but Jake's mom shot that idea down immediately. She said that Sally isn't ready to hear reason right now and that she's too focused on playing the victim. Things only got worse when Sally took her drama offline and started reaching out to people directly. She called one of my closest friends, Sarah, and unloaded her version of the story. According to Sarah, Sally claimed that Jake and I had deliberately humiliated her at the wedding to make ourselves look good. She said I had always been jealous of her and that this was my way of getting back at her. Sarah didn't buy it, thankfully, but the fact that Sally was dragging my friends into this was infuriating. I found out later that she'd also reached out to some of Jake's cousins, trying to sway them to her side. A few of them told her point blank to drop it, but others just listened and stayed neutral. The biggest blow came when Sally went after our parents. She called my mom, accusing her of taking my side and not supporting her enough. My mom tried to reason with her, saying that she loved both of us and just wanted the family to move past this, but Sally wasn't having it. She accused my mom of always favoring me and said she felt like an outsider in her own family. The phone call left my mom devastated. Sally also called Jake's mom demanding an apology for what had happened at the wedding. Jake's mom refused, saying that she had only spoken up because Sally's toast was uncalled for and hurtful. She told Sally that she should be grateful for all the support she'd received instead of trying to tear everyone down. That didn't go over well. Sally hung on her, and the two haven't spoken since. Andrew, meanwhile, was caught in the middle. Jake and I didn't hear much directly from him during this time, but Rachel told us that he was completely stressed out and unsure how to handle Sally's outburst. According to Rachel, Andrew felt guilty about the whole situation, but didn't want to upset Sally by defending us too strongly. It sounded like he was trying to play peacemaker. Jake and I tried to keep our heads down and not engage with Sally's antics, but it was hard to ignore the ripple effect. Some of our mutual friends started distancing themselves, probably because they didn't want to get dragged into the drama. A few even unfollowed Sally on social media because her constant ranting was getting to be too much. The final straw came about a week after the wedding when Sally sent me a long rambling email. It was full of contradictory emotions, anger, hurt, and a weird sort of entitlement. She accused me of ruining her wedding, being jealous of her and trying to steal her spotlight. She also demanded an apology from me and Jake as well as a promise to stay out of her life if we couldn't be supportive. I didn't respond. At this point, I don't know if there's anything I could say that would make things better. Jake agrees that it's best to just let her cool off, but part of me wonders if this is something she'll ever get over. Things took a dramatic turn when Sally crossed the line I never imagined she dared to cross. She showed up at my workplace. It was a normal Monday morning. I was at my desk trying to get through emails when the receptionist buzzed to let me know someone was there to see me. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was a little confused, but I told her to send them up. Moments later, Sally burst through the office door. Before I could even process what was happening, she launched into a tirade. She started yelling about how I had betrayed her, ruined her wedding, and made her look like a fool. My coworkers stopped what they were doing and stared, their jaws practically on the floor. I could feel the heat rising in my face as I tried to stay calm and ask her to leave, but Sally wasn't having it. She started screaming louder, accusing me of sabotaging her and stealing her moment. Her voice echoed down the hallway, and I could see people peeking out of their offices to see what was going on. Security was called, and 2 guards arrived within minutes. They tried to escort her out, but she made a scene in the lobby shouting that I was a fake sister and that our entire family had conspired against her. By the time she was finally removed from the building, I was mortified. My boss, who had witnessed most of the spectacle, called me into his office. I thought for sure I was about to get reprimanded. Instead, he surprised me. He was kind and understanding, saying that he knew family drama could get messy. He reassured me that my job was safe and even offered me a few days off to recover. He mentioned that he knew Jake through mutual professional connections and had heard good things about us, which was a relief in such a stressful moment. When Jake found out, he was livid. He couldn't believe Sally had stooped so low. He wanted to file a restraining order immediately, but I wasn't sure if we were ready to take that step. The mental toll of their actions, however, were undeniable. I was completely on edge, jumping at every notification on my phone, looking over my number in public. Our usual peaceful home felt invaded by Sally's chaos. Jake and I spent hours at night discussing our options. We debated between taking legal action or trying to preserve what little remained of family harmony. Jake leaned towards the former while I was still clinging to the hope that Sally would come to her senses. Just when I thought things couldn't possibly get more chaotic, my mom called me in tears to share yet another incident with Sally. This time, it involved a confrontation at Target of all places. My mom lives about 40 minutes away from Sally, and there's no way this was just a coincidence. Sally had clearly gone out of her way to corner her there. My mom explained that she had been browsing in the home goods section when Sally appeared out of nowhere. At first, my mom thought it was a random meeting and greeted her warmly, trying to stay positive despite everything that had been going on. But Sally wasted no time making her intentions clear. According to my mom, Sally went on to rape, claiming that I was the favored child and that our parents had always prioritized me over her. She accused my mom of taking a blind eye to what she called my calculated attempts to steal her spotlight. She even brought up childhood grievances, things like how I supposedly got better birthday parties or more praise for my accomplishments, as if every resentment Sally had ever felt was spilling out at once. And my mom was the easiest target. My mom, bless her, tried her best to stay calm and reason with her. She explained over and over that she loved us both equally and had never favored one child over the other. She said that she just wanted the family to heal and move past all this drama, but Sally wasn't interested in hearing it. She interrupted my mom repeatedly, dismissing her attempts to mediate and accusing her of being blind to the way I supposedly manipulated everyone around me. My mom and Sally's tone was the harsh and combative, almost like she was looking for a fight. The confrontation lasted about 20 minutes right there in the middle of the store. My mom was completely shaken by the time Sally finally stormed off. She called me from her car, her voice trembling as she recounted what had happened. Hearing her so upset broke my heart. My mom is one of the kindest, most patient people I know, and she didn't deserve to be dragged into this mess. I tried to reassure her, telling her she had done nothing wrong and that this was just another example of Sally's inability to take responsibility for her actions. But deep down, I felt guilty even though I knew it wasn't my fault. I hated that my mom was now caught in the crossfire of this ongoing feud. Jake, on the other hand, was livid. He paced the living room as I relayed the story, his fists clenching and unclenching. "This is harassment," he said, his voice low and angry. "She's dragging your mom into her delusions now. Enough is enough. We need to do something." By something, Jake meant legal action. He had been pushing for it ever since Sally's meltdown at my workplace, and now he was more determined than ever. "She's not going to stop," he said. "You've seen that. She's escalating, and we can't just sit back and let her keep doing this." As much as I hated the idea of taking legal steps against my own sister, I couldn't ignore the fact that Jake had a point. Sally's behavior was spiraling out of control, and every time I thought she had hit rock bottom, she found a new way to make things worse. We spent the next few days discussing our options. Filing for a restraining order was one possibility, but we worried about how it would affect the rest of the family. My parents were already struggling to navigate the tension between Sally and me, and I didn't want to put them in an even more difficult position. At the same time, I knew we couldn't keep letting Sally bulldoze through our lives unchecked. Meanwhile, Andrew was caught in an impossible position. He reached out to Jake, apologizing profusely for Sally's behavior. It was clear he was mortified and didn't know how to handle the wife's increasingly erratic actions. He admitted that he was at his wit's end and didn't know how to calm her down. Rachel, Andrew's older sister, told me to vent about how embarrassed their family was by Sally's antics. She said that Sally's behavior was the talk of their extended family and that everyone was appalled. Rachel even suggested that Andrew should consider counseling for Sally, which I thought was a good idea. However, I doubted Sally would ever agree to it. Sally's social media attacks continued, but now they included fake references to being harassed and not feeling safe. She posted a photo of herself with the option, "Some people want you to fail, but I'll keep standing tall." Her followers, who were mostly in the dark about the full story, flooded her comments with support. To make matters even more awkward, some mutual friends started distancing themselves from both of us. A few people reached out to say they didn't want to take sides, while others simply stopped responding to the messages. It was painful to see relationships I had valued for years being affected by this drama. As the days went on, I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I started losing sleep, replaying the events in my mind and wondering where it all went wrong. Jake was my rock through it all, constantly reassuring me that we hadn't done anything wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd lost my sister for good. The final blow came when I received a letter in the mail from Sally. It was handwritten and several pages long, and she accused me of turning the family against her, ruining her reputation, and trying to take over her life. She ended the letter by saying that she wanted nothing to do with me until I apologized for everything. I didn't respond. I didn't even know where to start. At this point, it felt like there was nothing I could say or do that would make things right in her eyes. For now, Jake and I are focusing on moving forward and trying to find some peace, but the damage Sally has caused feels irreversible, and I'm not sure our family will ever fully recover from this. Hello, everybody. My husband's entire family took some serious action. His parents, siblings, and even a few extended relatives were fed up with Sally's antics. It started with a group text that turned into an emergency family meeting. The message was clear. They were done sweeping everything under the rug. Jake and I weren't invited to the family meeting, which honestly was a relief. The thought of sitting through what was bound to be a tense and uncomfortable discussion was not something I wanted to experience firsthand. Still, we got all the details later from Andrew and his older sister, Rachel. And let me tell you, it sounded like a scene straight out of a courtroom drama. Apparently, Andrew's father, who is a no-nonsense corporate lawyer and someone who usually steers clear of family squabbles, decided enough was enough. He took charge, and he didn't come unprepared. From what Rachel described, he showed up with a literal folder of documents. This wasn't just some casual conversation. This was a full-blown financial reckoning. He started by laying out every single financial contribution Jake and I had made towards the wedding, from the deposit on the extravagant venue to the designer flowers and premium catering. It was all meticulously documented. Rachel said it was almost shocking to hear it all listed out like that. It wasn't just a few $1,000 here and there. It was a significant amount of money, and it didn't stop with us. Andrew's dad also went through the contributions the rest of the family had made. Jake's parents had paid for the open bar and a portion of the wedding planner's fees. Andrew's older siblings had chipped in for the bachelorette and bachelor parties, which were extravagant destination trips. Even some extended family members have contributed to smaller costs like decorations and party favors. By the end of it, the total amount was jaw-dropping. Then came the real blow. Andrew's dad made it very clear that while the family had supported Andrew and Sally's decision to have the kind of wedding they wanted, they were blindsided by how irresponsible it had been managed. He didn't mince words, pointing out that the lavishness of the wedding was unnecessary and that the financial strain it caused was unacceptable. But what really drove the point home, according to Rachel, was when he addressed the recent drama. He said that Sally's public behavior had gone beyond just embarrassing herself. It was damaging the family's reputation. Between the social media posts, the confrontation at my workplace, and the spectacle at Target, Sally had dragged the entire family's name through the mud, and now the family was done quietly tolerating it. The ultimatum was delivered with the kind of precision you'd expect from a seasoned lawyer. Sally and Andrew were told they had two options. The first was to start repaying every cent of the money that had been borrowed for the wedding. This wasn't up for negotiation. Andrew's dad even went as far as to say that if they didn't comply, a legal action would be taken to recover the funds. The second part of the ultimatum was that Sally needed to issue a formal apology, not just to Jake and me, but to the entire family. And this wasn't meant to be some half-hearted text or vague social media post. They wanted a genuine public acknowledgement of her actions and an apology for the hurt she caused. Rachel said the room was tense enough to cut with a knife. Andrew, who had been relatively quiet up until that point, tried to defend Sally, saying that she was just under a lot of stress and hadn't meant for things to spiral the way they had. But Andrew's dad wasn't having it. He shut down Andrew's excuses with a firm but calm response, essentially saying that stress didn't excuse the way Sally had treated people. Sally, for her part, sat there in stunned silence, according to Rachel. She didn't interrupt or argue, which was surprising given how combative she had been in recent weeks. Rachel said it was the first time she'd ever seen Sally look genuinely at a loss for words. By the end of the meeting, Sally and Andrew were left with no wiggle room. They had to make a choice: take responsibility and stop fixing the mess they created or face the consequences. Andrew and Rachel told us later that they left the meeting with a clear message. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect and accountability, two things Sally had been severely lacking. Andrew, who had mostly stayed quiet throughout the chaos, finally spoke up. He admitted that he felt trapped between loyalty to his wife and frustration with her actions. He apologized to his parents and siblings, saying he never wanted things to spiral out of control. He was clear he was mortified and desperate to salvage what was left of his family support. By the end of the meeting, Sally had no choice but to agree to their terms. She looked visibly defeated. Rachel said and even tried to shift the narrative to make herself the victim once again, but the family wasn't having it. Shortly after the meeting, I received a text from Sally. It was a weak attempt at an apology, clearly written under duress. "I'm sorry for how things went down," it read. "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond to hash things out and try to salvage our relationship. But the other part, the part that was tired, drained, and completely overheard drama, knew it was time to let go. Jake and I talked about it that night. He was firm in his stance. No more. We had given Sally chance after chance, and every time, she had found a way to make things worse. Her half-hearted apology felt like yet another manipulation, more about saving face than making amends. The next day, we made the decision to cut ties. I blocked Sally's number, removed her from all my social media, and told my parents that we needed space. They were heartbroken but supportive, understanding that the constant emotional manipulation had taken a toll on me and Jake. Sally's reaction was predictable. She took to social media again, posting vague messages about losing family ties and standing strong despite betrayal. This time, though, the response was different. People were tired of the drama. The likes and comments were fewer, and even her staunchest supporters seemed to be losing interest. Meanwhile, Andrew started making small payments towards the wedding expenses. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Jake and I appreciated the gesture, though we made it clear to Andrew that our issue wasn't about the money. It was about the respect and boundaries Sally had trampled over repeatedly. In the weeks that followed, life started to feel normal again. Jake and I focused on our careers, our friends, and the quiet life we'd worked so hard to build. We even took a short trip to the mountains to decompress and reconnect. My parents and Jake's parents continued to communicate with Sally, though they respected our decision to distance ourselves. My mom mentioned that Sally had started seeing a therapist, which I took as a small glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she would eventually learn from all of this. As for the rest of the family, the fallout was undeniable. Andrew's parents were still upset, but seemed to be mending their relationship with him. Rachel told me she was cautiously optimistic that Andrew could steer Sally towards a better path. Though, she admitted, it would be a long road. And for me, the biggest takeaway was learning the importance of boundaries. It was painful to cut ties with my sister, but it was also liberating. I realized that family doesn't mean tolerating toxicity, and sometimes the best thing you can do is step away and protect your peace. Jake and I are stronger than ever. And while I miss the relationship I once had with Sally, I've made peace with the fact that it may never return. For now, I'm choosing to focus on the people and things that bring joy to my life.